This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Stirling Soap Company. I'm a big fan of shave soap. I've been using different brands for years, and I recently gave Stirling's shave soaps a try, and I've been very happy with the results. Stirling's shave soaps give you a great lather and a frictionless feel that allows the razor to glide right over the skin for a super close shave. No skin irritation and a clean, refreshing feel with no soapy residue after. I can tell you without a doubt, it's simply the best shave I've ever had. And my wife has noticed too. And here's the thing. With the ability to purchase 1-ounce sample pucks, you can try out different scents to find the right one for you. Give Stirling Soap a try today. Visit stirlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. It's April 5th, and quick, here's a trivia question for you. What NFL team drafted Joe Theismann in the 4th round of the 1971 NFL Draft? Now, if you don't know right off, you're probably not going to get it, but I'll draw this sentence out long enough for you to think a little bit more about your answer and then yell it into the ether. All right, the answer? The Miami Dolphins drafted Joe Theismann, and on this day in 1971, Theismann signed with the Toronto Argonauts instead. Why was that? Well, stick around. The answer is coming up. The 1971 NFL Draft had a lot of quality quarterbacks. In fact, when the draft was conducted in late January, the top 3 picks were quarterbacks. Jim Plunkett was chosen by the Patriots, Archie Manning went to the Saints, and Dan Pastorini was selected by the Oilers. Lynn Dickey, Leo Hart, Kenny Anderson, and Carl Douglas were selected in the 3rd round, and Theismann was the 8th quarterback taken when he was selected by the Miami Dolphins in the 4th round with the 99th overall pick. Theismann did not dislike the Dolphins. He was actually excited about the opportunity to play for Don Shula. But a couple of things here. One, Theismann had been a talented baseball player, and he was drafted by the Minnesota Twins as a shortstop. Second, the U.S. was bogged down in Vietnam, and there were a lot of guys, including Theismann, that did not know if they might get drafted. And third, Theismann was acting as his own agent. He met with Dolphins owner Joe Robbie after the draft and said, "I want a 3-year deal for $55,000. Joe Robbie said, "Sure, sounds good." Well, that took Theismann by surprise. He thought there was going to be some additional back-and-forth negotiating. Robbie then sweetened the deal with a $35,000 signing bonus. But, and this is the big but here, the signing bonus was going to be dispersed over the 3 years of the contract. And if Theismann missed a year due to injury or serving in the military or for whatever reason, then he'd have to return that to the club. And that hit Theismann the wrong way. Again, he just didn't know if he'd be in Southeast Asia at any point in the next 3 seasons. Unknown to the Dolphins, Theismann had also been talking with the Toronto Argonauts of the Canadian Football League. The Argos were willing to give Joe a $200,000 contract with a $50,000 signing bonus that was going to be a lump sum given to him off the top with no caveats. That was the big difference in the 2 offers. And so on this day in 71, he decided to sign and play with the Argos in Canada. He asked the Argonauts to not publicize the deal for a few days. He wanted to tell Robbie and Dolphins coach Don Shula first. But as tends to happen in these cases, the news leaked out to a local sports writer, and it found its way into the sports pages, and Shula saw it before Theismann could break the news to him. And that led to about a 20-year rift between the two. The Dolphins did okay without him, though, playing in 3 consecutive Super Bowls and winning 2 of those. Theismann also did pretty well for himself north of the border, so much so that Washington Redskins coach George Allen was willing to give up a first-round pick in the 1976 draft to the Dolphins, who still held his NFL rights to acquire him. On this day in 1976, the stuffed suits at the NCAA finally decided to do the right thing and allow dunking in college basketball. Now, here's the thing. The dunk was only illegal for 10 years, outlawed in 1967. And like a lot of things in this period of American history, it came down to race. The first recorded dunk happened in 1936 and proliferated, well, as much as it could proliferate in the 1940s and 50s. There were a lot of so-called purists who did not like this dunking of the basketball by tall guys because they thought it was taking the beauty out of the jump shot, well, one-handed set shot, and sharp passing. And when Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain started dunking the ball in the 50s, there was even more of a rumble. In the midst of the racially charged 60s, when black folks in this country were pushing for civil rights and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was daring to dunk the basketball over shorter white guys, well, that was a bridge too far for some of the NCAA establishment. White sports writers criticized Jabbar after shattering Gail Goodrich's UCLA single-game scoring record in his Bruin debut. They screamed, "He's changing the game! It's not fair! It's not right!" And so the day after the UCLA Bruins beat Dayton 79-64, behind Jabbar's 20 points and 18 rebounds, the NCAA declared that dunking was not a skillful shot and made it illegal. Jabbar said years after the draconian rule was put in place that he was not pleased at having a rule changed just to keep him from playing his best, and part of his passion for basketball was to see how far he could go as an athlete. Now, the flip side of that is it did force Jabbar to rely more on his hook shot. He'd been working on it for a while, and without the dunk, he got to perfect it before he got to the NBA. For others, though, like Julius Erving at UMass or David Thompson at NC State, it meant that they had to learn how to just drop the ball delicately into the basket after skying a foot or more above the rim. Anyway, finally, after the 10-year ban, it was lifted on this day, and it made the game a lot more fun to watch. Hey, speaking of Kareem, on this day in 1984, he sank one of those patented sky hooks of his in a game against Utah. That bucket gave him 31,421 points for his career, passing Wilt Chamberlain to become the all-time leading scorer in the NBA. Kareem was 36 at the time, and it took him 121 more games to surpass Wilt on the all-time list. Kareem played another 5 seasons and retired with 38,387 points, and he held that record until February of 2023 when Lebron James passed him. On this day in 1915, the boxer Jack Johnson was finally beaten. Now, that's not to say that Johnson never lost a fight in his career. His official record has 11 defeats. But since becoming the heavyweight champion 7 years earlier in 1908, he had taken on all comers and won all fights. On this day, it was Kansas farmhand Jess Willard, labeled as the latest Great White Hope, stepping into the ring to face Johnson. Willard was much bigger at 6 feet 6 inches tall, 250 pounds. Johnson was 6 feet even and 200 pounds. The fight was held in Havana, Cuba, with a crowd of about 27,000 there to watch a scheduled 45-round fight. Willard had one strategy to play, and that was to stay on his feet and let Johnson punch himself out in the Havana heat. Reports from the fight say that Johnson punched Willard relentlessly for the first 20 rounds, but Willard stood tall and answered the bell to start each round. The 37-year-old Johnson did start to tire, though, and he stopped connecting his punches with any power. And at that point, Willard turned the tables and started landing his punches. Finally, in the 26th round, Willard connected a left jab to the midsection and then a roundhouse right to the jaw to put Johnson on the mat for the count. Willard's win is still considered one of the great upsets in boxing history, and it was the last title fight for Johnson. He announced his retirement after this one, but he did come back and fight professionally for a few more decades. He fought his last fight in 1938 at the age of 60. And if you'll remember a few days back when I talked about Bobby Knight becoming the first to win a national title as a coach and a player, well, on this day in 2005, the Baylor Lady Bears beat Michigan State 84-62 to win the national championship. In the process, Kim Mulkey became the first women's basketball coach to win a championship as both a coach and a player. Time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. If you were anything like me as a kid, the threat of dying in quicksand seemed like an everyday peril that I needed to avoid. It would have been good to know this back then, but your body's buoyancy will keep you from sinking deeper than your waist. That is, if you go in feet first. Your lungs offer enough upthrust to keep your head above the surface. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.